Memorial Day is next weekend, and a bunch of you are going to be out hitting the waters in your area. And we're going to talk about some best practices for fishing on a holiday weekend in this episode of Fishful Thinker, the podcast. I'm Chad LaChance, and you're listening to Fishful Thinker, the podcast. All things fishful, all the time. Hey guys, Chad LaChance here. Thanks as always for tuning into this episode of Fishful Thinker, the podcast, brought to us, of course, by Sportsman's Warehouse. Visit them at sportsmans.com or any one of 140 plus stores nationwide, and they will ship to the store closest to you. And don't forget about the folks at Peterson Toyota in Fort Collins, Colorado, ready to serve all of your car and truck needs. Guys, it's the last weekend of, sanity around the public waters in the region before Memorial Day weekend hits. And when the Memorial Day weekend gets here, it really signifies the main start of the fishing season in Colorado. And there will be a spike in the amount of people fishing, not just for the weekend, but for the remainder of the summer. All the way until about July. The studies show that the highest percentage of people that fish at all will fish sometime between Memorial Day and 4th of July weekend. So we're headed into the busiest season of the fishing season, of the open water season. And that brings a few things to my mind that I think people need to keep in mind a little bit. And I want to take care of a couple quick house cleaning things real quick, or at least one. Last week on my podcast, several of you heard that I mentioned I was having some health issues. A whole bunch of you reached out to me, and I appreciate that very much. It does mean a lot to me. I appreciate the support. My stuff's going to be ongoing for a little bit. It's relatively significant, and it's going to take a little bit of time, and I appreciate your patience with it. The support does, like I said, mean a lot. It is Fish a Day for the month of May that I have going on here, and I'm maybe being a little optimistic on that one for this year. It's going to be a little tough for me to get 31 days on the water, but I'm going to do my best to do that, and mentally it's keeping me sane. So I live lakefront, so it's not too far away for me to be able to go at least take a swing at some fish. And I'm continuing to do that to keep my sanity. So thank you for everyone that has reached out to me or sent me nice thoughts, regardless whether you actually sent them or just thought them. Everybody got problems. Nobody wants to hear about mine, but I just want to let you guys know that I appreciate the support. Now, moving on. I mentioned that I live lakefront here and I could be able to fish right here. That's true. What that also means is I also can see one of the busiest campgrounds in the entire state of Colorado that I live in, and it will be an absolute zoo over there at that campground, all basically starting about the middle of this coming week and all the way through for a while now. And that's going to be fantastic to see on one hand, because I love to see people getting outdoors and recreating. I want people out there fishing or hunting or hiking or whatever it is that you do to get you outside. So I'm all for that. The flip side of it is, as an angler, of course, the boat ramps and everything will be busy. So I thought I'd throw out some advice for this. I've lived overlooking this very, very popular lake and campground for a long time, and I've seen the chaos, I've seen how it evolves, and most importantly, for the sake of this podcast, I have fished my way through it, and that's going to be really the basis for any information that I put out there on this particular one. So the first thing I got to say about going into a holiday weekend is patience. You have to be patient. And I'm the last guy to lecture on patience, to be honest with you. I have very little patience. It's something I've worked on as a human for a long time to become more patient, because I don't really have a high tolerance for things that, test my patience, so to speak, particularly with groups of people. And I have to fight my way through it. But I'm here to tell you that it's a good fight. And if you just go into this particular weekend, I'm not saying you need to change your life, but for this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, if you're going fishing for the sake of this podcast, please be patient. And what I mean by that is be patient at the boat ramp, the parking lot, the fishing itself, all the way around. Be patient. It's going to be a zoo, and you just have to get that out of your system. Having said all that, please still go. I don't want you to be one of those people that stays home because you can't deal with it. So get out there and deal with it. Just particularly try to be earlier or later or some things like that in terms of when you arrive or when you're leaving or whatever the case might be as far as wherever you're going to go. But to get into some nuts and bolts of actually trying to stay a little bit more effective as a fisherman, there's a couple things you can keep in mind. And one of those I kind of just alluded to as far as coming and going early and late. If you're going to camp somewhere near water, which I know a big percentage of you will, take advantage of the fact that you're there and get up very early, even if it means getting up ahead of your family or whatever. Get up really early, at least a day or so, 2 days of the week. You know, if you're going to be there for 3 days, maybe get up very early or stay up late and fish, because what you'll find is the shoulder times won't be so busy. Conversely, avoid fishing during the middle of the day when or during the busiest times of the day when you can see the most amount of people out there on, kayaks, paddleboards, boats, pontoons, whatever everybody's out on. Keep in mind, those are all going to be out there, and fishing around them can be challenging mentally. Having said that, it won't affect the fishing as much as you might think. You'd be surprised how many fish don't care about, particularly paddleboards and kayaks. I deal with it constantly here because, again, the bay that I back to is full of paddleboards and kayaks on a regular basis. It doesn't change the fishing a whole bunch. The fish don't seem to care a whole bunch about the paddleboards or the kayaks or whatever the case might be, but the anglers do. And I've mentioned that a lot in podcasts, but it gets to the fishermen more than it gets to the fish. It has been my experience that the fish really don't care about the paddleboards or the kayaks. Same as in a river, when the river boats come through. You see, I've seen anglers or heard anglers and been around anglers that are screaming about drift boats coming through, or rafts, I should say, like guided trips in, like, say, Browns Canyon or Poudre Canyon or Gore Canyon, some of the places where rafting companies run rafting trips. But it doesn't put the fish off at all. The fish will feed right through that, and we have routinely filmed even fishing right behind rafts going down the river. Same thing with the paddleboard here. Yeah, it can be frustrating with somebody's oblivious and they paddleboard over your line, but did it bother the fish? No, it bothered you. And so trying to do your best, be patient, and make some good throws around them, you'll do just fine as far as catching fish goes. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that the fish are completely unaffected by the pressure. That's obviously not true. You get enough boats and enough people on the lake, it's going to move them around or get them to sulk a little bit. But that's why I already mentioned fishing early or late in the day to get around some of that, for one. For two, fishing more thoroughly, really giving fish a chance to to get to your bait and do what's going on. So if I'm going to fish on Memorial Day weekend, I'm going to focus really hard on being thorough and fishing less water, but fishing all of that water more thoroughly, because moving around the lake is also more difficult for no other reason than it's wavy, because there's more boats out there, so you end up moving around slower, or it's busier, so it's a safety issue. You need to move around slower so you're not running people over, knocking paddleboards down, or whatever the case might be. But also because there's likely to be people on a lot of the spots, so you don't have as much water available to you to fish. So fish more thoroughly wherever you are. Details, nuances. When I say fish more thoroughly, really pay attention to your bottom contact. As far as if you're throwing something that should have bottom contact, really pay attention as to where your baits are in the water column. Really being thorough about the angles, the amount of angles that you mix up and things like that. So basically I'm taking half as much water but fishing it over the same amount of time. And really what that does is let you exhaust all of your possibilities for what might get fish to bite. And another thing that I will do a lot if I'm in a crowd is downsize everything. everything gets small for me in a crowd. What I mean by that is my lures. All my lures get smaller because when fish get more spooky, anything that threatens them, I'm of the opinion, anything that looks to be difficult to swallow or threatening is harder to get them to bite. Also, they're going to get more chance to look at stuff, and they're going to have more chance to refuse it. So the smaller it is, the less of a a detailed look they'll get of it. And then the third thing about that is if they're sulking at all, they're not going to be aggressive enough to grab something big. So small baits are going to be really important, and light line. So if I'm trying to decide what to take with me on a Memorial Day weekend camping trip to whatever my favorite lake is, I'm for sure grabbing all the finesse stuff, and I'm leaving most of the power stuff at home. That's for sure. And that should help you be more thorough in terms of catching. Now, another thing that you can do, or that you should keep in mind, I should say, is this is not the time to trophy fish. If Memorial Day weekend is the time to just get some fish caught, be out around the water, enjoy it. You may have a kid with you, your own kid or somebody else's. For that matter, the neighboring campsite's kid may join you. You don't have any idea, but you may have your wife with you that doesn't normally go, or your girlfriend, or whatever the case might be. You may be fishing with people that just don't have your level of seriousness for it. It might be your coworker or your brother, for all I know, but they don't fish as hard as you do. And so dumbing everything down and making everything small will help a bunch in that regard across the board. And so that's something I do. And another thing that I think that will help you a lot is if you're a person that throws artificials like I do. I'm an artificial bait guy. I don't care if it's a fly on fly tackle or a lure or whatever. I prefer strongly to throw artificials. Now, I will throw bait occasionally, very rarely, and if I'm ever gonna, it's going to be on Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day weekend or 4th of July or something like that. And the reason is the little edge that you can get from actually having something alive. Now, there's a giant, or something natural, I should say, as far as bait, but there's a giant caveat to that when it comes to, particularly for me, but I really think it should be for other people as well. Whatever I'm throwing is still going to be retrieved. So I'm not going to static fish. Unless I was fishing for catfish or maybe carp, I'm not going to leave a bait static on the Memorial Day weekend, because the retrieving of the bait will allow me to cover more water and find more fish. And if fish are already getting a lot of pressure and aren't moving around a bunch, waiting for fish to come to you is not good, and maybe they don't ever come to you. But if you're making a bunch of casts and covering some water, you have a way better chance of drawing fish or getting in front of more fish. And so that's important. So if I'm throwing power bait, for trout, let's say I was doing that, which is something I have been working on a bunch because I'm working with Berkeley on some stuff for that. I'm going to mold it and retrieve it. And there's some good videos of us doing that, but I'm not going to throw and soak it. I'm going to throw it out there, close the bail, and wind it in. Same as if I was throwing a spoon or a spinner or anything else. And I'm going to build the action into the bait in terms of how I mold it. And again, there's stuff on my YouTube about that, at Fishful Thinker. Berkeley's got stuff on their site about it as well. But look that information up. Power bait's incredibly effective. It's even more effective by a significant margin if you mold it into a shape and retrieve it rather than sit it on the bottom and wait for a fish to grab it. And also, by the way, they won't swallow it. So you'll be able to release them, which is also an excellent thing if you're camping, because maybe even your possession limit comes into play. You're camping for 3 days. You can't even keep 3 days worth of fish. So you need to be able to let them go. Retrieving will help. And that goes the same. Retrieving the bait goes the same if I was throwing worms in a river for trout. I would wind them and keep them moving. If I was throwing leeches, I would keep jigging them. I would keep moving the bait. It's just that the artificial bait swimming around on its own, the live bait swimming around on its own, does have a certain drawing power that is undeniable no matter what. And you're talking to a guy here, or listening to a guy who fishes artificial baits 99.5% of the time. So I'm not the biggest proponent of live bait or natural bait of any kind, but I will testify to its effectiveness, particularly when it's retrieved, and even better on light line. And I've already addressed the light tackle that I really think you ought to bring to have your best chance at staying efficient. So that's another thing I would consider doing on a holiday weekend like this is, like I said, throwing bait of some sort and light line. We talk a little bit about the crowding. You have to keep in mind that those crowds are going to move some fish around, maybe put some fish off, but the things like paddleboards and kayaks are not going to shut them down 100%. Rafts are not going to shut them down 100%. In fact, it's very common for me to sit on my paddleboard and just let a bait hang off the side of it right under the paddleboard. And with me sitting and my legs dangling in the water, it'll get bit. So it bothers anglers more than it bothers the fish when paddlers of all sorts, or swimmers are out there. I was at Aurora Reservoir in Colorado one time, and I watched a school of wipers swimming in and around people on the swim beach, right in the middle. All the kids, everybody playing on the swim beach. Wipers are swimming right through the middle of them, and they were eating the bait fish that were being stirred. When people were stirring up the bottom, the bait fish were eating there, and these wipers could be seen feeding literally right amongst the people. So don't let it get in your head that the fish are spooked by the paddlers or the swimmers or divers for that matter. It really won't. Boat traffic can be a little bit of an issue because it'll stir things up, but again, it will not stop the fish from biting. It may push them down a little bit or move them away from the banks a little bit, as the case might be, but it won't stop them from biting. And that's a really important thing from your mindset. You have to get that in your mindset so that you will fish with some confidence. And as a guy who guided for 20 years, there's a lot of days I guided where the lake was an absolute zoo, and some of those days were our best days ever if I could keep my anglers' heads in the game. Because a lot of the anglers, even though they paid me to take them out on a busy time of the year, are frustrated immediately when they get there and there's people all over the place. Well, I can't control the people, and all I can do is take you fishing. And if you keep the open mindset, you'd be surprised at how many fish will bite just fine in the crowds. Another thing I'll do, though, in that scenario maybe is fish outside the box a little bit. So if I know that a high percentage of anglers on a lake are throwing, let's say we're in a trout lake somewhere, and I know a whole bunch of people are going to be throwing little tiny spinners and spoons and maybe soaking power bait. Okay, well, now I might retrieve my power bait, or I might put some power bait behind a spoon. So in other words, I have the spoon with a little dropper behind it and a little piece of power bait behind it, because trout are curious. They'll follow the spoon, but they'll grab that power bait. And getting a trout that's slightly spooked because of all the traffic to bite that spoon might be harder, but it's easier to get them to bite that little power bait that's dangling back there. If you're a fly fisherman and you're really hung up on fly fishing, but it's a big crowd and you're worried about all that, fine, take a fly in a bubble. It's a spinning rod. Now I can throw a lot more distance. I can control my situation a whole bunch better, and I'm still got a fly on the end of it. So don't worry about that. You're still fly fishing. It's still a fly. You're fishing with a fly. Some of you are going to write me hate mail and say, "Oh, I ain't fly fishing." That's fine. I don't care. The reality is you're fishing with a fly, and you're going to potentially catch a whole bunch of fish. So I will mix up a little bit and usually make compromises in what I present to make myself more effective on these weekends. So please keep that mindset positive as you can, and that will help you catch the most fish. Now let me throw one more quick thing out here, and I am going to cut this podcast a little bit short because I got some other things I need to deal with this afternoon. But the last thing I think you should keep in mind for Memorial Day weekend, and this is really not relevant, but is relevant. Eat some fish. Catch something that you catch. If it's a good selective harvest type deal, I mean, I'm saying keep a 32-inch walleye or a 10-pound rainbow. But if you catch some average fish and you got some people with you that maybe aren't all the time at the woods or the water or whatever, especially, eat some fish. Enjoy it. Go full circle. Go, and be part of the food chain. Smoke a trout or grill a trout or wrap it in foil and stuff it with butter and herbs and throw it in your campfire, whatever. Eat some of the fish and remember again why we go fishing in the first place. And then the last thing, if there's other people struggling, be positive and maybe try to help them. Whether that be launch their boat at the boat ramp, which is the classic one, all the way to somebody who's maybe in a jam because of the weather and they're trying to beach their boat and it's windy or something like that, all the way to some kids that are struggling and you see them fishing and they're not catching fish and you are. Maybe walk over and help them for a little bit of a change on Memorial Day weekends. One weekend out of the year, maybe a couple weekends out of the year, put some other people's needs in front of yours during the crowd, and maybe the whole crowd will be better off for it. So, guys, I realize that this isn't a really specific podcast of things we normally talk about, but I do think it's relevant, and I know from living here for 20 years and watching out here basically what's going to happen at this lake and a million other ones over the next week as Memorial Day gets closer, and I know that there's still some great fishing to be had. I just need to change some stuff up a little bit maybe to be more consistent. So if you guys want to join the conversation at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or X, I'd appreciate that at Fishful Thinker. And for sure the YouTube channel, we're trying to keep up with that right now and keep videos flowing there. And that's more than 700 videos. That's at Fishful Thinker as well. Check that out. And also we're airing 5 days a week on Altitude Sports and World Fishing Network. So check us out there as well. So I appreciate you listening. This has been Fishful Thinker, the podcast.